She said I was too poor to be a father. Her mother agreed. Years later, I owned the company that crushed their legacy. Revenge tasted like victory. I never believed the American dream could shatter so quickly. One day, I was living as a software engineer with a good job, a beautiful wife, and newborn twins. The next, I was standing alone in our modest two-bedroom apartment, listening to the wheels of my wife's designer suitcase scrape across our floor like a knife cutting through my heart. When Emily and I met 3 years ago, everyone said we were from different worlds. She was New York high society daughter of Victoria Prescott, the ruthless fashion mogul behind VLA. I was just a tech guy from Chicago, with ambition but no pedigree. Her mother made her feelings clear the first time we met. "You're a disappointing choice," she told me with a dismissive glance. But Emily chose me anyway. We got married in a small ceremony that her mother refused to attend. Then came the pregnancy twins and complications that forced Emily to quit her PR job at a major fashion label. I left my position at a tech company to freelance from home, wanting to support her through the difficult pregnancy and help with the babies afterward. Our twins were born premature, a boy and a girl, both underweight and requiring constant attention. I covered our $1,700 monthly rent from my savings while juggling freelance work and midnight feedings. It wasn't glamorous, but it was our life, our family. At least that's what I thought. After the birth, Emily became distant. She barely spoke, couldn't sleep, and her mood swings were severe. I chalked it up to postpartum depression. Now I wonder if she was just acting buying time until she could escape. That afternoon, I came home early. The apartment was unusually quiet. Emily stood by the door next to a brand new Louis Vuitton suitcase price tag. Still attached, definitely not something we could afford. On our coffee table lay an envelope with the VLA logo and separation papers already bearing Victoria's signature. "Where are you going?" I asked, my throat suddenly dry. "Mother booked a flight. I'm going back to New York." Emily's voice was flat rehearsed. "I can't live like this anymore." I looked toward the nursery where our babies slept. "What about them?" "Mother will take care of everything. You don't need to worry. She said she'll hire nannies and pay child support if you agree to sign." My blood boiled. "Don't call that help. That's buying motherhood with money." Emily looked down, silent. I placed my hand on her suitcase. "If you walk through that door, you're no longer my wife and no longer their mother." She pulled my hand away, her eyes suddenly cold. "Love doesn't buy a bigger apartment. It doesn't pay hospital bills. It doesn't raise 2 children." I pointed toward the bedroom. "Tell that to them before you leave like a coward." Emily walked to the nursery, looked at our babies through the crib rails, but didn't touch them. She turned away before her tears could fall. Her mother's driver was already waiting downstairs. I stood frozen in our suddenly empty apartment, listening to the sound of her suitcase wheels rolling away, cutting deep into my heart. After she left, I found a letter she'd forgotten, her familiar handwriting catching my eye. It read, "Dearest Daniel, I know I'll regret leaving, but I'm exhausted by Mother's contempt for you. She says if I stay, she'll cut me off completely. I can't bear being seen as her failed daughter. Maybe she's right. Love can't buy security. I'm sorry." A few days later, I checked our door camera to verify when Emily had left. That's when I discovered something strange. The night before she departed, Victoria had come to our door, standing outside for 15 minutes, having some kind of silent exchange with Emily, just gestures. No audio. Afterward, Emily began packing. I started to wonder, was Emily not just pressured to leave, but had this exit been orchestrated long ago? The first week after Emily left was a blur of sleepless nights and endless crying, both from the twins and myself. I lost 14 pounds in 10 days. My body functioned on automatic pilot while my mind struggled to process the betrayal. The babies cried constantly. Without Emily's breast milk, I had to switch to formula, doubling our expenses overnight. With only one pair of hands, I often used my phone to play rainfall sounds, propping it near their cribs because I couldn't hold both babies simultaneously. Each day became a battle for survival. Between feeding times, I searched for remote jobs, cleaned bottles, did laundry that seemed to multiply by the hour, and tried to maintain some semblance of order in our apartment. I'd catch myself calling out Emily's name before remembering she was gone. Her choice. Her betrayal reality hit hard when I checked our finances. My savings would cover expenses for about 6 weeks. After that, we'd be homeless. I applied to 12 companies highlighting my experience and skills, but received the same response each time. We need someone with more flexible hours. Translation: not a single father with infant twins. I filed for emergency assistance, but was told processing would take 30 to 45 days. The system isn't designed for immediate response, the social worker explained apologetically. The system, it seemed, wasn't designed for fathers, abandoned with newborns. One night at the grocery store, my credit card was declined. I stood there humiliated, watching as the cashier removed my items one by one. "Just leave enough for the formula," I said quietly, sacrificing my own dinner to ensure my babies would eat. The walk home that night felt endless. My stomach empty, but my anger full. Then came Victoria's legal assault. A summons from her high-priced attorney demanded I appear in court to prove parental competence. The paperwork cited my unstable mental state, lack of income, and unsuitable living environment for premature infants. She was moving quickly to take my children too. The online attacks started next. Anonymous posts claimed I'd forced Emily into a doomed marriage, and was now a failed husband who couldn't provide. I recognized Victoria's venomous style in every carefully crafted lie. One night when both babies were screaming and I hadn't slept in nearly 72 hours, something in me broke. I gathered them both in my arms, sank to the floor, and began sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time, I felt my identity as a man dissolving. I was becoming a ghost of myself, fading a little more each day. "I'm sorry," I whispered through tears, rocking them against my chest. "Daddy's not good enough. I can't give you what your mother refused to give." My voice cracked as I admitted my failures aloud. I must have fallen asleep on the floor, both twins nestled against me. When I woke at dawn, my daughter was sucking on my thumb in her sleep, her tiny hand gripping my finger. Looking at her face, so trusting, so dependent, something shifted inside me. A thought crystallized with perfect clarity. I couldn't drown in this pain. I had to learn to swim with it. That afternoon, while folding their clothes, I found an old yellow onesie that Emily had hated. "Putting our children in this cheap thing is degrading," she'd snapped when my mother sent it as a gift. I laughed through my tears, a bitter sound in the empty apartment. "Then I'll turn what you considered trash into gold." I said aloud, the first spark of defiance igniting something new within me. That night, I searched online for baby clothing, design tutorials. I knew nothing about fashion. Victoria would find that ironic. But I could learn. I would build something from the very thing Emily and her mother despised: my ordinary middle-class sensibilities. While checking emails for job responses, I noticed something disturbing. My old work email account had been accessed from New York 3 days ago, exactly when Victoria would have learned about my website plans through her network of informants. Why were they still monitoring me? And what were they waiting for before striking again? I gathered my remaining savings, a pathetic $350, and made the most important shopping trip of my life. Not for groceries or baby supplies, but for raw fabric, plain white onesies, fabric markers, and basic crafting tools. This wasn't desperation. It was determination. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had an old heat press she used for her occasional t-shirt projects. "You can borrow it," she offered, "if you watch my kid during my Tuesday night class." I agreed without hesitation. In the quiet hours between feedings and diaper changes, I sketched designs that reflected our reality. My first creation was a onesie with "Born to be Brave" emblazoned across the chest. Next came "Dad's Little Warriors" and "Raised by Strength." Each slogan felt like a small rebellion against Victoria's world, where children were accessories, not warriors. I expanded to personalized blankets with embroidered names and wooden milestone cards to track a baby's first year, first smile, first roll, first time sitting up. Things that money couldn't buy, but that parents treasured. For 2 weeks, I stayed up after the twins fell asleep watching YouTube tutorials on heat transfer techniques and basic sewing. I failed repeatedly. Colors smudged, fabric burned when I set the press too hot. My fingers were constantly pricked from amateur stitching, but each morning I'd try again. One night after a particularly successful print, I stared at the finished onesie and realized I wasn't just selling baby clothes, I was selling my story. I created a simple blog titled "Brave Cubs from Heartbreak to Hope," and shared it in single-parent support groups. My post was brutally honest. I'm a father abandoned with 2-month-old twins. My wife chose wealth over family. Instead of drowning, I'm building something new. I included a photo of my makeshift workshop twins asleep in their portable cribs beside my work table. Finished products arranged simply but proudly. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in from parents who understood abandonment, who'd been looked down upon, who were fighting their own battles. Followers increased hourly, but no sales came in. I reminded myself that sympathy doesn't pay bills. Then on the 5th day it happened. An order notification chimed on my phone. A single mother from Nebraska had purchased a "Born to be Brave" onesie for her daughter. Her note read, "Thank you for showing me we aren't alone." I packaged that first order with trembling hands, including a handwritten thank you note. Before sealing the package, I took a photo and posted it online. "First Brave Cubs order shipping today. This isn't just business, it's proof we can rebuild." That post caught the attention of a journalist from our local newspaper. She contacted me for a brief interview about the single dad turning tragedy into a children's clothing brand. I invited her to our apartment, not hiding the cramped conditions or the challenges. The article she wrote was small but powerful. Local father creates brave cubs after wife abandons family. The story spread rapidly, picked up by parenting bloggers and social media influencers in the baby industry. Within 48 hours, my simple website had 50 orders. I worked through the night, transforming our living room into a mini production facility, printing, sewing, and packaging while keeping one eye on the twins' monitor. That's when Victoria noticed. First came a wave of fake orders from anonymous accounts, large quantities that tied up my inventory, but never completed payment. Then an anonymous email arrived. "Don't dream of climbing out of the mud where you belong." One morning, I woke to find my website completely down, a sophisticated DDoS attack targeting my hosting service. It took 2 days and hours on the phone with technical support to restore it. I called Ryan, a college friend who now worked in cybersecurity. "I need help," I admitted. "Someone powerful wants to shut me down." Ryan fortified my website and traced the attack's origin. The IP addresses lead back to Prescott and Cole law firm. He reported, "Isn't that your mother-in-law's personal attorneys?" I wasn't surprised, just disappointed at how predictable Victoria's tactics were. Before she could strike again, I quietly filed trademark applications for the Brave Cubs name and logo designs. If she wanted to fight dirty, I'd be prepared. A week later, I received an email that changed everything. Chloe Ramirez, CEO of Tiny Treasures boutique chain, wanted to discuss distribution opportunities. The name was vaguely familiar. Emily had mentioned her once as a former classmate who'd disgraced herself by marrying a poor artist. When we met at her office, Chloe was nothing like I expected. Sharp-eyed and direct, she examined my samples with professional scrutiny. "Your craftsmanship needs refinement," she stated plainly, "but your concept is exactly what our customers want. Authenticity, real stories. Not another trust fund, baby-playing entrepreneur." Then she leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Victoria once considered me pathetic for choosing love over status. I see an opportunity to show her that the people she dismisses are precisely the ones she can never control." I found myself smiling, a genuine smile, for the first time in months. My goal was never to impress Victoria Prescott. "No," Chloe replied, "but wouldn't it be satisfying if you succeeded anyway?" We hammered out distribution terms that would put Brave Cubs in 12 Tiny Treasures locations across the state. As I gathered my samples to leave, Chloe pressed a manila folder into my hands. "You should know Victoria isn't just trying to crush your business. This is evidence of how she manipulates other companies. If you're brave enough, we could do more than just sell clothing." I opened the folder, my eyes landing on a familiar name, VLA Holdings, where Emily held minority shares. A plan for revenge began forming in my mind. The partnership with Chloe transformed Brave Cubs overnight. Within 2 months, our products appeared in all 12 Tiny Treasures locations across the state. Each store featured a dedicated display with my story prominently shared beside the merchandise. Customers weren't just buying clothes, they were buying into a narrative of resilience. With increasing revenue, I hired Megan, a part-time assistant who helped manage orders while I focused on production. Then came Josh, a design student who brought professional polish to my heartfelt concepts. I moved the twins into a slightly larger apartment, with a dedicated workspace, though I still kept their cribs near my desk. Our breakthrough moment came at the Midwest Baby Expo. I'd been invited as a small business exhibitor, but the organizers also asked me to speak on the Starting from Zero panel. Standing on that stage with my twins now crawling at my feet, I shared our journey without embellishment. 6 months ago, I was a software engineer whose wife left him with newborn twins. I told the audience, I had 2 choices: collapse under the weight or build something new. I chose to build not just a business but a statement that parenthood isn't about wealth or status. It's about showing up every day. The video of that speech spread online, catching the attention of American Inspiration, a nationally syndicated TV show. Their producer called, wanting to feature our story in their small business spotlight segment. When the film crew arrived at our home, I didn't hide the challenges. They captured me balancing work while feeding the twins, the late-night production sessions, the stacks of shipping boxes in our hallway. They filmed the twins playing with fabric scraps while I prepared orders. The segment aired on a Tuesday evening. By Wednesday afternoon, our website had crashed from traffic and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. The image of the steel dad who refused to break went viral, making brave cubs a symbol for single parents nationwide. Hundreds of letters and emails poured in. You gave me courage to keep going after my husband left. My daughter wears her Brave Cubs onesie to every doctor's appointment for her heart condition. Thank you for showing my son that real men don't abandon their children. That's when Victoria's tactics changed. Instead of attacking, she called me directly, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Daniel, darling, we've gotten off on the wrong foot. I've been watching Brave Cubs' growth with great interest. She paused, clearly expecting me to be flattered. I'd like to invest $3 million to take your brand international. We could have Brave Cubs in Paris, Milan, Tokyo. And the catch? I asked, knowing it was coming. Hardly a catch. I'd merely require controlling interest and oversight of strategic direction. You'd remain the face, of course, the inspirational founder. I laughed, surprising myself with how hollow Victoria's offer sounded now. I won't take money from someone who tried to destroy my family. Save it for better lawyers, you'll need them. I hung up before she could respond. Through Chloe's network, I learned about Emily's deteriorating situation. Living in Victoria's mansion, she was increasingly isolated. Her high society friends avoided her. Once word spread she'd abandoned her children. Victoria arranged meetings with wealthy businessmen attempting to secure another advantageous marriage. But these setups failed consistently. Emily was damaged goods, now her abandonment of the twins, a social stain. Even Victoria's influence couldn't erase. One night, according to Chloe's source, Emily accidentally saw our television interview while passing through Victoria's media room. When our daughter called me Dada on camera, Emily broke down sobbing, locking herself in her room for hours. The desperate attempts to contact me started soon after. First emails, then text messages from unknown numbers. She even showed up at Chloe's flagship store, asking about me. Chloe, to her credit, simply said, "I don't discuss my business partner's personal matters." Then came the day Emily appeared at my door. I recognized her silhouette through the peephole, thinner than before, her designer clothes hanging loosely. For a moment, I hesitated, remembering the woman I'd once loved. But when I opened the door, I saw only the person who'd chosen comfort over our children. "Daniel, please," she began, her voice breaking. "I made a terrible mistake. I want to." "We have no room for someone who abandons her family," I interrupted coldly, holding her gaze for exactly 10 seconds before closing the door on her tear-filled eyes. That night, I sat in the darkness after the twins were asleep, wondering if I'd been too harsh. Then I remembered those first weeks alone. The credit card declined while buying formula. The sleepless nights, the court summons questioning my competence as a parent. No, I hadn't been harsh enough. A week later, Chloe sent me a contract offer from a financial fund with discreet connections to Victoria. Her note read, "She's panicking. If you sign, she'll think she's won. If you refuse, prepare for her next move." I smiled as I read it. This time, I wasn't the one walking into a trap, I was setting one. And this trap nobody would escape. After receiving the investment offer from Victoria's shadow fund, Chloe and I met in a private room at her company headquarters. No assistants, no phones, just the two of us, and a stack of documents. I've been building this file for years," Chloe explained, spreading papers across the table. "Victoria didn't just ruin my reputation when I married beneath my station. She systematically blocked my first business from securing loan suppliers' retail space. She nearly destroyed me." The documents revealed a patterned shell company's tax evasion schemes, shareholder manipulation, and evidence that Victoria had been using VLA holdings to launder money for certain clients whose names had been redacted. "How did you get all this?" I asked, stunned by the meticulous detail. "Her former CFO became my brother-in-law. When Victoria forced him out with false accusations, he kept copies of everything." Chloe's eyes were hard. I was waiting for the right moment. "We formulated our plan. I would consider Victoria's investment offer, requesting additional documentation, financial statements, and multiple meetings, all designed to make her think I was weakening while we built our case." "The arrogant always underestimate the desperate," Chloe said with a grim smile. As weeks passed with no definitive answer from me, Victoria grew increasingly agitated. My assistant reported being approached by a well-dressed man offering $10,000 for internal Brave Cubs documents. My home security system captured someone photographing deliveries to my house. The twins' daycare called to verify that an Aunt Victoria was authorized for pickup. She wasn't. Finally, a courier delivered a handwritten note. "Sign by Friday, or don't blame me when your pitiful brand burns to ashes." Meanwhile, Emily's life was unraveling. Victoria discovered her attempted contact with me and retaliated brutally, cutting off all financial access, canceling credit cards, and evicting her from the mansion. According to Chloe's sources, Emily was essentially homeless in New York, sleeping on the couches of increasingly reluctant acquaintances. Both high society and former friends rejected her. Abandoning one's children was a sin even the wealthy couldn't forgive. She appeared at my door one final time, rain-soaked and hollow-eyed. "Please," she whispered, "just let me see them 5 minutes." I stood blocking the doorway, unmoved by her tears. My children don't need a mother who only remembers them when her life falls apart. As I closed the door, I heard her slide down against it, sobbing. I waited until her footsteps finally retreated before allowing myself to feel anything at all. By then, Brave Cubs had reached heights I'd never imagined. We signed with America's largest mother and baby retail chain, expanding into international markets. Our Strength collection, inspired by those first difficult months, became our bestseller business magazines. Featured me as Entrepreneur of the Year, lauding the company's authentic mission and meteoric growth. The twins and I moved to a spacious home in an upscale neighborhood, not to impress anyone, but because they deserved a yard to play in and rooms to grow. When our evidence was complete, Chloe and I made our move. We simultaneously submitted our documentation to the IRS, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and 3 carefully selected journalists known for their investigative reporting on corporate crime. The story broke like a tsunami. Fashion empire built on fraud VLA holdings. Financial schemes exposed, headlined financial news networks. The exposé detailed Victoria's decades of tax evasion, money laundering, and shareholder manipulation. VLA's stock plummeted 78% in a single day. International partners terminated contracts en masse, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Within 48 hours, the FBI raided VLA headquarters and Victoria's private offices. Assets were frozen. Computers seized, employees questioned. The empire she'd built through intimidation and cruelty began collapsing under its own corrupt weight. Victoria was arrested at her home, photographers capturing her stunned face as agents escorted her to a waiting car. The image: Victoria Prescott in handcuffs, no makeup, wearing casual clothes instead of her signature designer suits, appeared on every news site. Those who had once courted her favor now denounced her. Even her personal attorney issued a statement, disassociating from Ms. Prescott's alleged activities. The fashion world, always swift to abandon the fallen, pretended they'd never admired her. Before being taken into custody, Victoria used her one phone call to reach me. Perhaps she expected me to gloat or rage. Instead, I simply said, "You once asked what I would do without power and money. Now you know how it feels." I hung up, feeling not triumph, but a strange emptiness. Revenge wasn't as satisfying as I'd imagined. It didn't return the months I'd lost with my children while struggling to survive. It couldn't erase the memory of Emily walking out. 3 days after Victoria's arrest, an unmarked envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten note, the elegant script immediately familiar, despite having no signature. "I'm sorry I let my mother become a monster, but perhaps I was never brave enough either." I folded the letter and tossed it into a drawer. Emily, like her mother, was now buried in my past. The trial of Victoria. Prescott dominated financial news for months. Despite hiring the most expensive defense team in New York, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Former employees testified about her financial manipulations. Tax documents revealed years of fraud, and international transactions pointed to extensive money laundering. The judge showed no leniency, sentencing her to 15 years in federal prison for financial crimes, market manipulation, and tax evasion. "Your position of privilege makes these crimes all the more egregious," he stated as Victoria stood stone-faced before him. Federal agents seized her personal assets, the Hamptons estate, Manhattan penthouse vacation properties in Aspen and Monaco. Her beloved mansion where she'd hosted fashion's elite was sealed with government notices. The VLA brand, once worth billions, was liquidated to pay creditors and fines. Most telling was the prison visitation log. No one came. Not her high society friends, not industry colleagues, not even Emily Victoria. Prescott, who once commanded rooms with her presence, now sat alone in a prison jumpsuit, forgotten by the world she thought she owned. Through Chloe's connections, I occasionally heard about Emily. After her mother's downfall, she'd moved to a small coastal town in North Carolina, taking a job as a supermarket cashier. The one-time Manhattan socialite now lived in a modest apartment above a local bookstore, her designer wardrobe replaced by practical clothing from department stores. Sometimes customers would stare, thinking they recognized her from somewhere. But the glamorous Emily Prescott, who had graced society pages, was gone, replaced by a quiet woman who kept to herself. According to my source, Emily sometimes paused while restocking magazines when she saw brave cubs featured in parenting publications. Once, when our twins appeared in a national ad campaign, a co-worker commented on, "Those adorable children." Emily simply nodded and continued scanning groceries, her brief hollow laugh masking what must have been profound loneliness. Meanwhile, my life expanded in ways I never imagined. With Brave Cubs established as a national brand, I launched the Brave Hearts Foundation, providing grants and mentorship to single parents starting businesses. We focused particularly on parents who, like me, had been abandoned with young children. The foundation's first recipient was a single father of 3 who created educational apps after his wife left. Within a year, he hired 5 employees. At the grant ceremony, he hugged me and whispered, "You showed me it was possible." The twins, now 4 years old, thrived in preschool. I scaled back my day-to-day involvement in Brave Cubs to spend more time with them, taking them to museums, parks, and children's events. We traveled together, their passports filling with stamps as they experienced the world I could now provide. In a televised interview marking Brave Cubs' 5th anniversary, the reporter asked the question everyone seemed curious about. "Do you feel you've gotten enough revenge against the people who abandoned you and your children?" I smiled, considering the question carefully. I never thought of this as revenge. I simply showed them that when you try to push a man to the bottom, you should make sure he doesn't know how to swim. The pinnacle moment came when we opened our flagship Brave Cubs store in New York, the very city that had once been forbidden territory under Victoria's shadow. The location was deliberately chosen just 3 blocks from the former VLA headquarters. At the grand opening, I led my twins onto the stage. They were no longer the helpless infants Emily had abandoned, but confident children who smiled at the crowd without fear. We weren't born to be pitied, I told the gathered crowd and cameras. We were born to prove that dignity can't be purchased. Later that evening, I stood in my new office overlooking the city lights. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Victoria Prescott's appeal had been formally denied. Her sentence would stand. I nodded slightly, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat down in the leather chair, gazing at the framed photograph of my children on the wall. They were laughing at a beach, building a sandcastle together. The image captured everything that mattered now. We didn't just survive, I whispered to their smiling faces. We rewrote our own story. I turned away from the city, view content, and the peaceful silence that surrounded me. The empire built from betrayal hadn't just succeeded. It had flourished. Not because of wealth or connections, but because it was founded on something Victoria and Emily never understood: unbreakable love. As I switched off the office lights, I felt no anger, no bitterness, just profound gratitude for the journey that had transformed me from abandoned husband to something far greater, a father who would never walk away. The shadows of the past had finally faded into insignificance, leaving only the bright promise of tomorrow with my children. That was the most satisfying victory of all.